pretty scaling, a term I just made up that is essentially the beauty version of power scaling, to assess a character's beauty based on the feats of their self and those around them. When Saiki K came out in 2016, it was extremely successful. A part of the reason why it was such a good comedy anime was how it made fun of other animes by picking on parodies and tropes that were popular in more serious shows, like Kaido being an extreme example of a chinibiel, and Hiro being an extreme musclehead doing things that are just not humanly possible. Even the main character himself admits that he is a tsundere. But there's one character in particular that always confused me on the type of character she was supposed to be a parody of. At first glance, it seems that Kokomi Teruhashi is a parody of the super popular, nice, pretty girl in most modern high school anime. But after watching the disastrous life of Saiki K over 15 times, I disagree. Not that she's a funny and interesting parody of the archetype, but that her beauty and popularity is very inconsistent throughout the series. With that, I bring you, how pretty is Teruhashi? Over the first 2 seasons, the extra 2 episodes in Season 3, and Saiki K Reawakened, we have multiple scenes that are supposed to tell the viewer how pretty Teruhashi is. There's a few scenes of her getting other people to do things for her just because she is popular and pretty, but there's one I want to hone in on specifically. We are introduced to this scene with Saiki trying to avoid his friends in order to get home in time for a short's premiere he wants to watch to avoid getting spoilers via telepathy. Teruhashi is one of the people he's trying to avoid here, and she asks Takahashi to help her look for Saiki. Takahashi immediately says yes, with no questions asked, and drops what he's doing to assist her. This in itself is already pretty huge. This establishes to the viewer that she's pretty enough for the average guy to agree to do small favors for her. There's other scenes of similar things happening, but there's a specific reason I chose this example. Saiki eventually does get found by Teruhashi and the others. Then, we cut to nighttime after school and see Takahashi still in the school searching for Saiki. I don't know about you, but there's no circumstance where I'm willingly staying at school after hours, especially in a school that looks this creepy at nighttime. If I was Takahashi in this scenario, I would have assumed Saiki went home, which means the only reason Takahashi was still there was because of the slight possibility that Saiki was still in the school. This turns this small favor into something much more. Takahashi went the extra mile for Teruhashi off of little to no explanation of why she needed his help. Now, you could say that this doesn't change the feat that much because Takahashi was just an easy target, but there's actually a direct reason to why that's not true. Takahashi is also a parody of a character archetype. Of course we know he is meant to be a side character parody, but remember how earlier I said that he shows us that the average guy will do favors for Teruhashi? His character is meant to mock multiple character types at once. He's a parody of the side character type and the average guy type. At this point, you're possibly thinking, but Bunky, there's already a character that's meant to mock the average guy type. And you'd be right. His name is, Sato Hiroshi. But the thing is, Sato isn't just average, he's downright boring. His design isn't like a side character, it's like a background character. I don't think anybody remembered his name before this video, and the quote-unquote average guy is still interesting to a degree. Sato's only interesting character trait is that he is so average and boring. I don't think Sato is a direct parody of a side character. I think he's a direct parody of a boring background character. The reason I think Takahashi fits the average character more than Sato is because Takahashi is the average. He's important enough to consistently be in episodes, but not important enough to be at Saiki's house or be in the episode where they're stranded on the island. Sato is a perfectly average person, but Takahashi is a perfectly average character. So by basing him as a middle ground, we can assume that anything that Takahashi is willing to do for Teruhashi, the average guy in Saiki is also willing to do for Teruhashi. And that is what makes Takahashi staying after school to look for Saiki such a huge feat for pretty scaling Teruhashi. But aside from this, she has an even bigger feat. The Coco Means, aka Teruhashi's fan club. It has over 36,000 members, and going off the actual census report of where Saiki lives, Oita Prefecture, that means that over 3% of all people in the area are in the Teruhashi fan club, and that's only going off that guy's member card. There could be way more members that we don't know about, including a guy that hasn't washed his hand in months because he had a handshake with Teruhashi, a guy that has her name tattooed down his back, and their leader, who has his email as Kokomi Love Forever. Nice job doing the bare minimum, dude! Now, all of that is already huge in itself, but there's something I haven't mentioned yet. Famous politicians are a part of this fan club. Not politician, politicians, multiple, plural. Ignoring the fact that that is really creepy because Teruhashi is in high school, this already adds on to that already huge feat. People that assist in making Japanese laws are a part of a fan club for Teruhashi. Okay, she has some pretty huge feats. We know she is really pretty, but is she? Okay, I'm gonna be using the word counterfeit to describe the opposite of a feat, or like a win for Teruhashi. Basically, something that alludes to her being not that pretty. So Teruhashi only actually has one counterfeit, but trust me, this one counterfeit is enough for me to become extremely confused on how pretty she is. In this scene, some guys start to hit on Teruhashi, and they describe her as cute and say, quote unquote, pretty hot. Reminder, a couple minutes before this, Teruhashi makes Kaido do a triple backwards roll because of her beauty. Not to mention, she's always described as a goddess. The fish in the aquarium are naturally drawn to her. And even God himself listens to direct requests from her. Somebody that is just pretty hot does not hold this much power. You know who else they describe as pretty hot? Mera Chisato. They never call her a goddess. She can't speak to God. Animals don't follow her. There's no way Mera and Teruhashi can be even put in the same realm of existence if we think about Teruhashi's past feats. So knowing this, it is impossible to pretty scale Teruhashi. This one moment contradicts all the previous feats we've seen. It wouldn't have been as outrageous if they didn't use the same descriptor for Mera and Teruhashi in the same episode. Is Teruhashi goddess level or just pretty hot? Does she send requests directly to God, or is she just cute? Sadly, I think this is a dead end, and we'll never know how pretty Teruhashi really is. Unless Teruhashi is also a psychic. The most popular Saiki theory that I know about is that all of his friends are actually psychic. And I'm not just talking about Teritsuka and Ayura. Hyro has super strength, Nendo's mind can't be read, Kaido consistently breaks the fourth wall, Yumehara can also break the fourth wall and rapidly lose weight, Mera can survive on little to no food, and Saiki and Teritsuka are psychic. Sorry Kobayasu, I couldn't think of a power for you. So, what is Teruhashi's power? The power of controlled influence. At base level, without using her powers, I'll say she's 5 times more pretty than the average girl in Saiki. But she can manipulate the level of prettiness she's perceived as at will. It depends on if it'll benefit her or not. Now this scene makes more sense. Maybe Teruhashi wanted to lower her chances of getting hit on at the beach. But maybe she didn't lower it enough. That's why she still gets hit on, but they don't think she's that pretty. And as we've seen, every psychic in this series has drawbacks and limitations. Her weaknesses are most likely that her powers don't work on children and don't work on other psychics. That's why Saiki isn't affected by her beauty, and Teritsuka, whose whole thing is being a pervert, doesn't actually seem to care that much about Teruhashi. This also explains how Teruhashi is able to use her beauty to make Imu back off of Saiki. But Ayura, who is a psychic, is unaffected by Teruhashi and keeps pursuing Saiki even after she realizes that Teruhashi has a crush on him. So just like our 3 main psychics, she has noticeable weaknesses and limitations. This theory would explain any and all inconsistencies in Teruhashi's beauty throughout the series. Am I overthinking this? Maybe, but regardless of if my theory is true or not, this is in no way a critique to Saiki. I still think it's a wonderful, pretty much perfect comedy anime. I just think that this topic was fun to play around with. Until next time, Bunky, signing off.